Alright, hey guys, Miss G again. We're going to continue on with triangles, and now we're going to talk about Pythagorean Theorem. I feel like for the most part, you guys have Pythagorean Theorem nailed, you're good with it. It was really getting good there at the end of when we were in class that people were recognizing when to use it. So Pythagorean Theorem is for right triangles only, and Pythagorean Theorem is just a formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. But now we have to make those letters make sense. So again, it only works for right triangles. If you do not have a right triangle, you have no sense even using Pythagorean Theorem. It doesn't work. So in Pythagorean Theorem, A and B is represented by the legs, and C is talking about the hypotenuse. So from our first lesson today, I already showed you where the hypotenuse is, but if you forget, hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. So notice in my formula, it's C squared, but when I put it on my triangle, it's actually C. Doesn't matter on this one where you put A or B, because in the formula, it's addition. So if I switched around and put B plus A, it's still the same because of the addition symbol. So when you're using Pythagorean Theorem, it is used to find a missing side. Remember, this is side only. We haven't talked about angles at all. Missing sides. So, for example, let's say you're given, whoa, that's really bad. I'll put a right angle in there because it has to be one. Let's say you're given this side is 4, or 3, this side is 4, and you need to find this side. Normally they'll give you X, they don't give you the C and make it all nice and pretty. Maybe in middle school they might have, but high school they don't really do that. You are to recognize you have a right triangle, which means use Pythagorean Theorem. So, A and B are the legs, so let's say this side is A. I'm going to say this leg is B, and this X is going to represent C. So then you plug in your numbers. You'll have 3 squared plus 4 squared equals, I'm just going to change it to X squared since in my problem I said the hypotenuse was X. Remember, the number up top doesn't mean multiply it by 2. The little number tells you how many times to multiply the big number by itself. So 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, then we get X squared. PEMDAS tells you to do exponents first, then PEMDAS obviously is going to tell you to add because that's the only thing left to do. For this side is 25. You can't have an X squared as your answer, you need an X. So the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root. And we know the square root of 25, it's actually plus or minus 5, but the sides of a triangle can't be negative, so it's positive 5. So our side is 5. If you get, well, I don't want to say that, because if you get a larger number, just forget that. So this one you should recognize, because we talked about Pythagorean triples before. Those are ones that we already know. Just off the bat, make right triangles, so there's a 3, 4, 5. If you multiply all those numbers by 2, you get a 6, 8, 10. So we've already talked about those Pythagorean triples, so this is one that we usually start with. I'm not going to go into depth on that one because you guys have an ed puzzle that you're going to be doing anyways, so you can follow along on that one. It's a super easy one. Like I said, I didn't feel like we needed too much work on it. One thing that I do want to say is that it's not always nice and pretty. Okay, sometimes they give you the hypotenuse and they tell you to find a leg. So there's several ways that you could do this. You could set it up as a regular problem with A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Alright, so and then we're going to say here's our A squared. We don't know the B squared. And this is our hypotenuse. Or you could recognize that you are solving for a side. So if I say this is B, sometimes you'll see it written out like this. So B squared, or B because I already took away the squared component, equals the square root of 8 squared. The hypotenuse is always going to be first, minus the other leg. Either way, I never showed you that way, but I know some of you are already doing it. I'm not going to teach it that way, but if you're doing it that way, great, keep at it if you understand it. I'm going to continue on here just because I like the algebra, and we need to continue practicing our algebra anyways, because all of you are moving on to algebra 2, so you'll have to do it anyways. Alright, so 5 squared is 25. X squared stays x squared. 8 squared is 64. So now we have this variable on this side. We need the 25 to go away. Since it's a positive 25, I'm going to subtract 25 on both sides. And I'm left with what 64 minus 25 is... Can't do that in my head for some reason. Is that 39? Yeah, it's 39. Alright, again, to get rid of a squared term, we just take the square root. So we're left with x equals the square root of 39. Remember, I tell you if it's not a perfect square, leave it. You guys should know your perfect square is up to 20. If you don't, keep practicing those. So that's the basics of Pythagorean Theorem. Remember, it's right triangle only. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a or b is represented by the legs, and the c is always the hypotenuse. So for this one, I think I already mentioned it, you have an ed puzzle, and that's just going to conclude what we're going to talk about for this week. Next week, again, we're going to still continue on with triangles, I believe, unless I just get an itch to do something else, but I think just sticking with triangles, because for now, that's what you're going to be seeing for the majority of the rest of your mathematics, except for circles, and we didn't get to circles, so we're not going to learn new information. We're only just going to do review, unless you guys say that you really want it. Circles are a little rough, but hey, we can do them. So hopefully this has been really helpful. I tried to make the assignments this week a little more fun, not so boring with the Google Docs. And please just let me know if you need any help, or if there's someone that isn't able to get a hold of me and they need paper copies. Please, get a hold of me and tell me who they are. So I can get those to Mr. Peters and they can pick them up at the school. Have a great week, and I will see you guys next week.